Hello, Fiesta Garden students and families. I miss you terribly, and I hope that everyone is staying well and healthy. Today's story is titled When Pigasso Met Mootisse. The author is Nina Laden. I hope you enjoy. There once was a young pig named Pigasso. While the other piglets rolled in the mud and played games, Pigasso painted. He painted anything and everything, and in a most unusual way. At the same time, once was a young bull named Mootisse. Mootisse was not like the other bulls. He wasn't interested in bullfighting. Mootisse was happy only when he painted pictures, and he painted big, bold, bright pictures. In time, word of Picasso's talent spread throughout the pig provinces. Soon, art-loving pigs from all over lined up to buy his creations. At the same time, Mootisse was getting famous in the cattle community. There weren't many households that didn't own a moosterpiece. Pigasso and Mootisse were becoming art superstars. But this came with a price. Everybody wanted to see them. Art buyers and art sellers, art students and art historians, art groupies. It was an art attack. One day, Picasso got fed up and said, "I'm tired of this noisy pig pen." At the same time, Mootisse declared, "I'm sick of this crowded cow town." Needing a change, they both decided to look for a peaceful place where they could paint without distractions. So each of the two artists looked far and wide for the perfect spot. Picasso found a lovely farm looking towards the east. Mootisse found a handsome farm facing the west. After Picasso moved in, he went to introduce himself to his new neighbor across the road. At the same time, Mootisse went to introduce himself to his new neighbor across the road. That is how Pigasso met Mootisse. And coincidentally, that is how Mootisse met Picasso. At first, Picasso and Mootisse were friendly and welcomed each other as neighbors. But soon, things began to change. It started one day when Picasso criticized one of Mootisse's paintings. Then Mootisse made fun of one of Picasso's. Mootisse called Picasso an art hog. Then Picasso called Mootisse a mad cow. Mootisse quipped, "You paint like a 2-year-old." Picasso retorted, "You paint like a wild beast." Mootisse raged, "Your colors look like mud." Picasso spat, "Your paintings look like color by numbers." Then things got really out of hand. It was a modern art mess. Picasso stormed off into his house. "That Mootisse doesn't like my art," he huffed. "Well, I'll show him." And Mootisse bullied his way into his house. "I'll give that Picasso something he can really criticize," he snorted. Then a full-scale feud erupted. But it was a most unusual battle. Armed with ladders and buckets of paint, Mootisse launched the first attack. He started at dawn. By the end of the evening, he had succeeded in transforming the outside of his house into a monster-sized moosterpiece. Not to be outdone, Picasso fired up his paintbrushes and in full view of the enemy, counterattacked. He turned his farm into a huge and outrageous pork of art. The two artists then retreated into their houses and pulled down the shades. Picasso certainly didn't want to look out his window, and stare at a Mootisse. And Mootisse had no desire to give his rooms a view of Pigasso. This presented a problem, and there seemed to be only one solution. Without a word to each other, Pigasso and Mootisse each began to build a huge wooden fence down the middle of their road. At first, Pigasso and Mootisse seemed satisfied. Both artists went back to painting by themselves. But after a while, Pigasso was surprised to find that he missed that bull-headed Mootisse. At the same time, Mootisse found his studio empty without the presence of pig-headed Picasso. Pigasso pondered, that Mootisse isn't such a bad artist. He has some interesting ideas. Mootisse moaned, that Picasso may not paint like me, but he knows what he's doing. However, being naturally pig-headed and bull-headed, neither artist knew how to apologize to the other. So they did what they do best. They let their paintbrushes do the talking. Picasso painted on one side of the fence and Mootisse painted on the other. Each worked until they were exhausted. It was strangely quiet when they were done. Then, curious to see what Mootisse had been doing, Picasso sprinted around to the other side. At the same time, Mootisse galloped over to Pigasso's side. The silence was finally broken as the two artists began laughing at their amazing work of art. From that day on, Picasso and Mootisse became great friends. They happily took down the fence and shared their different views. A few months later, a big museum bought the fence. Picasso called his side when Picasso met Mootisse. Mootisse called his side when Mootisse met Picasso. The critics called it incredible. The end. I would like to also read to you the author's note. The true story of Picasso and Matisse. Picasso and Matisse were not a pig and a bull, but they were characters. They were two of the finest artists of the 20th century. While they were never neighbors, they became close in the small world of art. Picasso and Matisse were friendly at first to each other. They even traded paintings. Matisse also gave Picasso an African mask, which inspired him to paint in a primitive style. But soon it became apparent that Picasso and Matisse were becoming rivals and competitors. Picasso said some bad things about Matisse's paintings, and Matisse said some bad things about Picasso's. But over time, the two artists learned to respect each other and became lifelong friends. They both owned many of each other's paintings. I hope you enjoyed the story when Picasso met Mootisse, and I hope that you are able to find some creativity during this time in drawing or painting. Bye-bye, everybody. I'll see you next time.